Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another car video. For some newer subscribers, a couple of you guys have asked me how do I film videos in my car. I just want to say that I have a car mount. So I just put my phone in the mount and I turn on the video and I go. I'm not holding it with my hands. I have both my hands on the wheel, just so you guys know, because I've had a couple people asking me. But that's how I do my car videos. I do have a mount. I wanted to do this video. This video is going to be on Megan Thee Stallion and her whole situation. I actually filmed, oh, what's in my eye? I actually filmed another video earlier this week, but I feel like every single day the plot has fucking thickened on this situation, and there's been a lot of back and forth, and there's been a lot of he said, she said, and I wanted to make a video just sort of talking about the facts of this situation. Obviously, we're all gonna have our own opinions on what we think is going on, but I feel like there's just a lot of he said, she said. There's a lot of he said, she said going around right now, and there's a lot of people that are just saying a ton of shit without no facts, no proof. So I just wanted to talk about the facts of the situation, and of course I'm gonna say what my personal opinion is, but like I just want to talk a little bit about some of the facts of the situation. So earlier this week, I believe it was Monday, Meg Thee Stallion went on Instagram Live to talk about some problems that she's been having with her record label 1501, which is a local independent label in Houston. It's owned by Carl Crawford, who is a former Major League Baseball player. Some of y'all may know him as Evelyn Lozada's baby daddy. I didn't know that until this whole thing broke out. This whole situation occurred, but apparently he's Evelyn's baby daddy. So he has a ton of money. He was like one of the highest paid MLB players when he retired. He has like tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of fucking money. So he took his money from baseball and he ended up opening his own record label. And basically he discovered Meg Thee Stallion and signed her to a 4-album deal at his label 1501. Subsequently, she signed a distribution deal with 300, which is, I believe, Lear Cohen's company. Because a lot of the times, I've also seen some confusion about why is Meg Thee Stallion signed to like so many labels. Why does she have so many different deals? A lot of the times when you have smaller independent companies, they don't have the means to distribute your music with the same sort of impact as a huge major label. So you might sign a distribution deal with a larger label. 300 is pretty large. Young Thug is through 300. Lil Durk is through 300. A lot of artists are through 300. So you would sign a distribution deal. So you have your record deal which is with your record label, and that's how you record your music. So a lot of the times they front you the money to get in the studio, because like studio time costs money, mixing and mastering, producers, engineers, background, vocalists, all these things, songwriters, all these things cost money. So a lot of the times what your record label does is they front you the money for the actual recording, to do your music recordings, but they might not always have the means to actually distribute the music. So some people also sign a distribution deal, which is actually what Meg did. She signed a distribution deal with 300. So they're actually the ones that distribute the music. So Meg's singles up until this point, if you look at them, they say 1501/300 because it's a record/distribution deal. And then in September of last year, 2019, Meg Thee Stallion also signed a management deal with Roc Nation. She was formerly managed by her mother, and I believe the assistant manager was T. Farris, who is still involved in this whole situation. We're going to get to him a little bit later. But unfortunately, of course, her mother passed away last year. So Meg was in need of new management, and her career was also sort of going up and up. So I think she probably wanted to get a more higher profile management team that could get her some more high profile jobs, which Roc Nation has done. She's on the Birds of Prey soundtrack. She got the cover of Rolling Stone. She's done some stuff with Vogue. She got a Puma endorsement. These are very high profile deals for very high profile clients, for very high profile amounts of money. I'm sure these are the type of things that you can get when you're in bed with a high profile label like Roc Nation. She is not signed to Roc Nation for a record deal. She only has a management deal with them, even though they are a full service company. I also want to put that out there because that seemed like it was something a little bit confusing. As of this moment, they only manage Meg. She's not putting out her records through them as of yet. So Monday, Meg went on Instagram Live. She said she's been having problems with her label 1501. She said that she's been having problems with them ever since she signed her management deal with Roc Nation, that things were all good, and then as soon as she signed her management deal, she said that shit went left. She said that she got some real lawyers, those were her words, like real lawyers, once she signed with Roc Nation, and that they looked over her contract and alerted her to some things in her contract with regards to how much of her money that she would be keeping versus how much of her money that 1501 would be keeping. I was thinking about motherfucking Usher, 8701, all these numbers, sorry you guys, but versus what 1501 was gonna be keeping. And so she said, you know, oh, I thought that, you know, shit was all good, shit was all sweet, we was all family, you know, 1501 is a local label, Carl Crawford is a Houstonite just like her. So she said, you know, I thought I'd just be able to renegotiate my contract and, you know, it will all be sweet. Apparently the negotiations were not sweet, and she said on her live that 1501 has blocked her from releasing music. She was supposed to release music this Friday. Apparently that's actually back on. She also had a release date for her debut album, which was May 5th. And she said that since they could not come to an agreement with the contract renegotiations, they blocked her from releasing music. She also said in her live that she admittedly didn't know what was in her contract when she signed it. She said that she signed the contract when she was young, that she was like around 20 years old or something like that. This is going to be important later, that's why I'm mentioning it. She said that she was like young when she signed the contract, around 20 years old or something like that, and that she just wanted to give new up-and-coming artists a heads up to make sure that they really read their contracts, that they really look over their contracts, that they hire a real lawyer, not a label lawyer, which was also her terminology. She said that the label supplied her with a lawyer to look over the contract, and the label lawyer told her that, you know, everything was fine, it was good. So she said, make sure you get a real lawyer and not a label lawyer to look over your contracts. Just make sure that everything is on the up and up, and that she can't release any music until it's worked out. Immediately, everybody was like, oh my goodness, Meg is in a bad deal. You know, the entertainment industry is so predatory. You know, artists are always getting into these bad deals. It's not fair. You know, hashtag free Meg. That just blew up all over social media. Carl Crawford responded to that. He did an interview with Billboard. I'm sure Billboard reached out to him to get his side of the story. In his interview with Billboard, he said that Meg Thee Stallion knew what was in her contract, that her mother, Holly, that has passed away, and also T. Farris, the other manager, assistant manager, if you would, that they were actually the ones that brokered the deal with Carl Crawford and 1501, that everybody knew exactly what was in the deal, and that the deal stated that there would be a 60-40 split of Meg's musical earnings. So that's the profits off of the singles, the mixtapes, the albums. She's in a 4-album deal. So 60-40 split, that 1501 would get 60% of the profits off of the music and Meg would get 40. That it was a 70-30 split of all other profits. So the performances, the live shows, the appearances, things of that nature. Also said that they negotiated a partial ownership of her masters, which means that Meg has partial ownership of her own music, so that for the rest of her life, every single time you ever hear Hot Girl Summer or Fever or Diamonds or Cash It or Big Old Freak, you know, any of these songs, Meg's gonna get paid because she like has partial ownership of her masters and her publishing. And that was the part that got people like a little bit twisted, because to get partial ownership or any ownership of your masters and your publishing is a big deal, especially for a new artist. As a lot of people may know, Taylor Swift has been fighting for her fucking masters for, I don't know, at least the last 3 to 5 years. She's been talking about how she cannot get her masters from her early work with her old label when she first came out and she was doing the country music thing. She didn't own her masters, and now she doesn't own those songs. Like, she just doesn't own them, and Scooter Braun, who's like her fucking nemesis, actually bought them, and she's in this like back and forth trying to like get ownership of her songs. So when Carl Crawford came out and said that Meg actually has, you know, partial ownership of her music, a lot of people felt like, oh, that's actually a really good deal. And so now people don't know what's really going on with the whole situation. Carl Crawford also posted something on Instagram with Jay Prince that Meg Thee Stallion took as a threat towards her. She filed a restraining order against him and against the label. She got a temporary restraining order granted, and in addition to the restraining order, since she has now a restraining order against her label, they cannot block her from releasing music. So now she says that she can drop music again, so she will be dropping her music this Friday that she was planning on dropping. And she's also suing her label, trying to get out of her contract. In her lawsuit, she says that the negotiations of her deal or whatever, of her contract, she used the word unconscionable, and she said that it's the 60-40 split. She said that there's a 60-40 split, and she said that all of the money from her live shows, her earnings, her performances, is all paid 100% directly in full to 1501, and that they're then supposed to give her share, which she said that they have not been paying her, that she has not been receiving her cut that she's supposed to be getting paid, that they're deliberately vague with the banking and the accounting, and that she just hasn't been getting paid her fair share, and that she's been doing these high profile jobs, she's been doing all these shows. Allegedly she did over 50 shows last year, and that she's just not making enough money. She's just like not getting enough of a cut based on the contract as it stands, and that she wanted to renegotiate. They wouldn't let her renegotiate. Things went sour. Now she feels that they're threatening her. She's suing to get let out of the contract altogether. So I want to start off by saying, right off the bat, there's a he said, she said in terms of what the contract actually says and what the stipulations of the contract are. I find it very interesting that Carl Crawford did his interview with Billboard, and a lot of people just sort of took his word as bond, as like, oh, he spilled tea on Meg, and so now like Meg is lying. It's like, until we actually see the contract, we don't really know what the terms and conditions of the contract are. Carl Crawford has said he has receipts. He said he has receipts on Meg, that he has copies of the contract, that he will be bringing this paperwork forward in court. So obviously he can't show us, you know, on the internet or social media or, you know, in real life before this court date occurs. So I'm very curious to see when this court date comes, what the actual stipulations of the contract are. Because I do agree that if Meg got partial ownership of her masters and her publishing, for a new artist, that is excellent. Like, I'm not gonna say that it's not. Like, that is excellent, having ownership over your own shit. But Meg didn't say that. So it's sort of like Meg said one thing, Carl Crawford said another thing. We won't really know what's true about that until we actually see the documentation and know for ourselves what the stipulations are of this contract, you know? So I just feel like it's really weird to see people like immediately picking sides when there's no proof. It's literally just, it's like that Spider-Man meme, like Meg pointing fingers at Carl, Carl pointing fingers at Meg saying, you know, this is actually what's in the contract, it's a good deal. Meg saying, no, it's not, it's a bad deal. Until we actually see the contract ourselves, there's no proof, and we have no way of knowing. So that's what I have to say about that. But again, I will say that, like, if that is actually in there, that is really good for a new artist to have ownership of her own stuff. So I also want to say that I find it really, really interesting that Carl Crawford has also said that Meg owes him over $2 million. I find that really, really, really hard to believe. The only reason why I find that hard to believe is because Meg worked a lot in 2019. As I said previously, Meg worked over 50 shows, which is at least one show a week. That's a lot of work. She traveled a lot. She was on the road a lot. Her booking fee is allegedly $100,000, which would mean that if she did 50 shows, she had a net profit of at least $5 million. Out of Carl's own mouth, the split is 70-30. Meg also has 3 platinum singles and 1 that's almost gold. Hot Girl Summer is platinum, Cash Shit is platinum, Big Ol' Freak is platinum, Fever is almost gold. So that means that Meg has moved almost 3.5 units for 1501. 3.5 million, sorry. She's moved almost 3.5 million units for 1501. Out of that 3.5 million units, all the earnings from that, 60% of that went to 1501, because by Carl's own admission, the music earnings split is 60-40. So if the music earnings split is 60-40 and the live performances and shows split is 70-30, and Meg most likely made at least $5 million in shows and appearances, at least, because that's just the shows. So the appearances, the the Jimmy Kimmel, the Saturday Night Live, the Diamonds, the Birds of Prey appearances, all that shit that she also got paid for, that's even more money. I find it very hard to believe that Meg is in a hole for $2 million with as much work as she did last year. And if she is in a hole for $2 million with as much work as she did last year and as much earnings as she made for the company last year, that makes me very curious actually about the terms and conditions of this contract, because I can kind of understand Meg's point of feeling like I'm doing all this work. I know the amount of shows that I'm doing. I know the amount of units that I'm moving, and yet, you damn near send me a bill saying that I still am in a hole for $2 million music earnings and a 30% split of performance earnings, and yet you still say I owe you $2 million. And Meg also said that out of her 40% that she keeps, she's also been the one that's paying out of pocket for the producers and the engineers. DaBaby was on cash shit. Meg is saying she paid DaBaby for that feature out of her own pocket. So she's also making the argument that the label didn't even pay for any of that. So it's sort of like, if you're paying for all this stuff out of pocket and the label's not paying for it, and you're already getting a minimum out of the money that's being made, and then you're still being told that you're $2 million in the hole, I don't find it far-fetched that you might wonder, like, well, actually, what are the terms of the contract? Like, have I missed something? Like, because I'm not making any money. It seems like I'm making a ton of money for the label, yet you still say that I owe you. It's not a stretch to me to wonder what's in the contract. That's just my personal opinion, looking at the numbers, looking at the percentages, and looking at what both sides are saying right now. On the flip side of that, Carl is saying the contract says what it says. The contract says what it says. These are the percentages. You also have partial ownership of your masters and your publishing. You're not going to get that kind of deal anywhere else. And Carl is saying that things went left when she signed to Roc Nation because he feels like Roc Nation, which is a large corporate entity, is trying to strong arm him out of his artist. So on that hand, I totally understand the concept of, like, you feel like you are an independent label that, found this girl, sort of plucked her from obscurity, sunk millions of dollars into her career and building her up just for her to build up a buzz, and then along comes, a larger label to just, like, sort of pluck her and take her away. That's something that happens a lot in sports. I don't know how many people have seen the movie Moneyball. That's, like, one of my favorite sports movies. That's, like, a huge part of, like, Moneyball is baseball. That's a huge part of baseball, which is that, you have smaller teams. In the movie, it was Oakland. You have smaller teams that sort of get these unknown young talents, they develop them, they put in all this work with them, and then as soon as they become great, here come the Yankees, which can offer them $100 million, like, here come the Yankees, or here come the Red Sox, or, here comes a large scale entity that can, like, offer your star that you plucked from obscurity and that you blew up all this money. And that's also not fair. Like, that's also not fair either. So I'm very curious to see actually how this case ends up going, because Meg is suing now to get out of her contract. She hired the same lawyer that was used by the Marvin Gaye family when they sued Robin Thicke and Pharrell over blurred lines. He's a very good fucking lawyer. Very good lawyer. I believe his name is Richard Bushman, something like that. And he won that case for them, and that was actually an unprecedented case, because prior to that case, you could not make the argument that, well, you guys ripped off the vibe of the song, the feel of the song. It had to be something outright, like an uncleared sample, or, they didn't actually sample Got to Give It Up by Marvin Gaye. Pharrell actually wrote the drum line himself for Blurred Lines, but he based it around Got to Give It Up, and that was enough that they felt like, they emulated the song, and they basically stole the whole fucking vibe of the song, and they had to fucking pay the Gaye family millions of dollars because that that music made so much money, right? So Meg got a good ass lawyer that has already set a new precedent in the music industry, and I feel like what they're gonna try to argue is that it doesn't matter. They're gonna try to argue that it doesn't matter what the terms and conditions of the contract are. They're gonna try to argue that It doesn't matter that it's 60-40 or 70-30 or that she may or may not have partial ownership. They're going to try to argue that at the end of the day, Meg is working like a slave. She's doing 50 shows a year. It's only 52 weeks in a year. That she's doing 50 shows a year. That she has 4 hot records, 3 platinum singles and 1 gold, that she's moved 3.5 million units for this company, that she's done over 50 shows for this company, and yet somehow she's still $2 million in debt, and she's not making any money. She's not making enough money to live off of. She cannot renegotiate her contract with them successfully. So she needs to be let out of this contract. I feel like that's what they're gonna argue, and if they can convince a judge that her contract terms are unconscionable and get her out of this contract, that's gonna be another landmark decision, really unprecedented in the music industry, because we've all heard about artists getting caught in contracts that they can't get out of. Lil Uzi Vert right now is fighting his label. We've heard of Tanashi fighting her label, RCA, like Prince, who very famously showed up with motherfucking slave written on his face, you know, like we've all heard of artists being caught in bad contracts and not being able to get out of their deal. So if Meg is able to get out of this deal, that's going to be really, really huge for the industry. But again, I also see the flip side of that if Meg is able to get out of this deal, what type of precedent does that set for the smaller, you know, independent labels that build up artists, and then when the artists get big enough, you know, the larger labels come sniffing around? What type of precedent does that set if they can now get let out of their contracts just because? I've also seen a lot of people bring up Future, and that something similar also happened with Future. He was signed to Rocco, he started blowing up, he wanted to get out of his contract so he could sign to a major label. He owed Rocco 3 albums, they took it to court, Rocco won, he had to put the albums out really, really fast and get off the label. Similar thing has happened to Lupe Fiasco. Similar things has happened to all types of artists. So again, it will be really interesting to see if Meg is able to get out of this contract and where that goes. For me personally, I am dying to see what the actual terms of this contract are. I cannot wait until that goes to court and that's able to be released to the public, what the actual terms and conditions are. Now, in terms of like a lot of just the vitriol that's been going around with regards to Meg Thee Stallion, I feel like what I just said, what I just laid out over the last 22 minutes is the facts, the bare bone facts of the case. With regards to a lot of the vitriol that's being thrown at Meg Thee Stallion, I think a lot of it seems very personal. Like, people have a personal problem with her. I think that if this was somebody else, it would not be as vitriolic. I feel like if this was Normani, and I've seen other people say this as well, if Normani came out and said, you know, the reason why I haven't been able to drop music or, you know, do as many things as I wanted with my career is because I'm in a bad contract with RCA, people would be like, oh, now we understand, let her out of the contract. You know, people were really fighting for Tanashi to get out of her contract. And I think even if Normani said, you know, I knew what was in the contract, I knew I'd be getting partial ownership of my masters, but I didn't realize that the money that I would be receiving. Oh, I'm sorry. Carl also said, Meg Thee Stallion also said that she only got 10K up front. Carl said that she got 50K up front. So again, that's he said, she said. We need to see some receipts, some checks, some check receipts, some cash receipts, some money order receipts. So we need to see some receipts because it's a lot of he said, she said. One person said one thing, one person said something else. There's no proof backing up either claim. So I find it very interesting to see the people that are taking Carl's word as if it's law when there's no receipts for none of what he said either until we get to court. Not saying I believe or don't believe either one, but I'm just saying we don't have no proof, and yet people are believing Carl over Meg. That's interesting to me. But I feel like if it was somebody like Normani that came out and said, you know, even though I got partial ownership of my masters, I realized that the percentages that I'm being paid are just too small. I can't live off of them. I'm not making enough money. I'm working like a slave. I feel like there would be more of a discussion around ownership, around percentages, what's fair, like, is it fair to split 70-30 even if you have partial ownership of your masters? Is that still a fair split, right? Is it fair to split 60-40 of your music earnings even if you have partial ownership of your masters? Is that a fair split? You know, there's a conversation to be had about that, but everybody's like, Meg is a liar, she's a whore, she's evil, she's lying about her age, she's lying about this. I knew she was a fake Aquarius, bitch. Shit that has nothing to do with the facts of the case. And I just find that really interesting, the amount of vitriol and mudslinging that's being thrown at this girl without any proof. We don't have no proof yet of what's happened. We don't have any proof yet of what's happened. Meg said something, it got reported in Billboard. Carl gave an interview, it got reported in Billboard. It's he said, she said right now until we have the proof of what are the terms and conditions of the contract and what is the argument going to be in front of the judge about what does an artist deserve and what's fair. Until we know those things, is again, as he said, she said at this point, is mudslinging. So I find it very, very interesting, the glee with which people are trying to sort of knock Meg Thee Stallion down a notch or two. And I do think if she was a different girl with a different reputation, that the conversation would be different. So I think that's all that I wanted to say about that. I just been watching this shit unfold. It's been like really, really, really interesting. And I do think that like whatever the outcome of this is going to be, I think it's very possible that it could be super important for the music industry, because if they let her out of this contract, it's going to set a precedent for artists getting out of contracts. And even though on the one hand we all know about artists getting like caught in bad deals and not being able to get out of them, we also all know about smaller independent labels that put a lot of time and effort and energy into an artist just for artists to sort of get, you know, scooped up and snapped up by a larger label. So it'll be really, really interesting to see how that goes. Oh, actually, and another thing I wanted to say was also that Carl Crawford saying that Meg's mom and T. Farris knew about the whole situation and what was going on. And I've seen a lot of people saying like, well, she had to know if her mom knew. I feel like if your mom and your manager that you've known your whole life tell you that everything is good and everything is copacetic, you don't have no reason to think otherwise. You don't have no reason to believe otherwise. So I'm also not going to automatically say that she knew just because her mom was involved. And again, unfortunately, her mom has passed away, so nobody can ask her. So I also find it really interesting that everybody's like, her mom, Meg's mom. We can't ask her unless we bust out the motherfucking Ouija board, unless we say her name, Holly Pete, 5 times in the mirror and hope she appears in the back seat. None of us can ask her. So until we get some concrete documentation, paperwork, again, checks, receipts, the contract itself with everybody's signature, with the date on it, so we know how old everybody was when it was signed. I personally think people are making like a super big deal about Meg's age for no reason. All the girls have an industry age. All of your faves have an industry age to make them seem younger and more approachable, all of them. So people making this big fuss about Meg like lying about her age, I find also to be weird. Like, niggas quibbled about Beyonce's age for years and years and years. Is she 15? Is she 18? Is she 21? How old is she? It's weird to me how much people are making that a big deal. But until we get some concrete proof on either side, this is a lot of he said, she said. So I'm very curious to see how this ends up playing out in the long run. Let me know what you guys think. I know there's going to be tons of opinions on this one. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace. I'm back. I actually thought of some other things that I wanted to say. A couple other things I wanted to say. Number one, I wanted to say that I've also seen people feeling like, who is Meg Thee Stallion to even go to her record label and ask to renegotiate, especially because she has a 4-album contract and she hasn't put out any albums. Meg Thee Stallion does have out a very successful mixtape that generated millions of dollars of revenue, which could have been counted as an album, but 1501 doesn't want to count it as an album, which is their prerogative to do. And again, Meg Thee Stallion also has 4 platinum singles and 3 platinum singles and a 4th that's almost gold. So I feel like it's a little bit unfair to act like as if Meg is just some nobody artist that's bringing nothing to the table. I feel like the artist that she was when she signed her original deal, her original contract, she's definitely not that artist anymore. She's definitely proved that she has earning power. And she's also, oh, there's like a glare. That's weird. And she's also definitely proved, see, it's because I said Holly name in the mirror. Holly, please get out of my car. I'm not talking bad about your daughter, Holly. Y'all, I have this glare. What is this glare? I hope y'all can see it. Anyways, I feel like it's a little bit unfair to act like as if Meg didn't have any bargaining power to come to her label to try to renegotiate. She has actually proved that she's an earner for them, that she's a hit maker for them. And I don't necessarily think that she was out of pocket for wanting to renegotiate. Meg herself said several times that she was not initially trying to leave her label. She just wanted to renegotiate because she didn't feel like she was getting enough of her own personal earnings with the amount of work that she's putting in. And again, she is, even though she does not have out an album, she did put out a successful mixtape, and she does have several platinum records and gold. Is some girls out here like Sweetie, no offense to Sweetie, that's been hawking the same single for 3 years. Meg has proven to her label that she's an earner. I do feel a little bit disappointed that the situation got this hostile and acrimonious, and I don't think it's fair that people are acting like she was coming to the table with nothing, like she don't have no nothing to bargain with. Like, she has proven herself as an artist, and I feel like people don't want to sort of give her props for what she has accomplished, especially as a newer artist, because I do feel like Meg has really made a pretty big impact. So I wanted to say that. And I also wanted to say that I've seen a lot of people saying that it's not fair for Meg that Meg signed the management deal with Roc Nation. Again, we just don't know what the stipulations of her contract are. Like, until we know the stipulations of her contract, like, we just don't know. Like, we don't know if there's a stipulation in her contract, for example, saying that she like can't sign a management deal outside of 1501. We don't know. Like, I've seen people being like, she's not allowed legally to sign a management contract outside of 1501. We don't know that, because we don't know what the stipulations of her contract actually are. No one has actually seen the paperwork. So I'm not going to say that she was automatically wrong for signing the Roc Nation deal either. And I don't think that, again, as an artist that's raising in profile, I don't automatically think that Meg is wrong for wanting to renegotiate a contract now that she's a proven earner. And I don't think that Meg is wrong for wanting to get higher profile management now that she's a higher profile artist. I don't think that it's fair to just abandon ship to your label. If that's the situation, your label that believed in you, I don't think that that's fair. But I also don't think that, you know, she should just continue being a big fish in a little pond if that's the situation either. I don't know. Like, maybe I can just like see everybody's perspective, and I really don't think I don't even think this could get resolved without it going to court and a judge presiding over the matter, because honestly, everybody has their own best interests in mind, and I don't really see any way for them to meet in the middle on this. And that's it.